Africa's official unemployment rate edged down slightly to 31.4% in the fourth quarter of 2025, according to Statistics South Africa's latest quarterly labour force survey. But behind the headline numbers, the labour market tells a more troubling story. Rising numbers of discouraged job seekers, stagnant employment growth, and nearly half of the workforce underutilised. For insight into these figures, we speak to Gideon Joubert, spokesperson for Free SA, the Foundation for Rights of Expression and Equality. Thank you for joining us, Gideon. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you. It's a very important topic, I think, that we need to unpack here this morning.
Absolutely, and it's our pleasure. So the quarterly labour force survey shows a slight drop in the official unemployment rate. Why does Free SA argue that this doesn't represent meaningful progress?
So there's a few reasons for it. The first one is that the overall change is about 0.5%. Now that the decimal 0.5% does a lot of heavy lifting in the take that we've had an improvement in unemployment rate. It represents a seasonal fluctuation of about an increase in employment estimated about 44,000. But if you look at it across a year, it's fewer than 21,000 additional jobs that were created. And that's in a labor, or rather an employment pool of over 17 million people. So that is statistically insignificant and marginal at best. And what's a greater concern is the number of people that actually left the official job market, or the discouraged job seekers that you've already mentioned. Now, South Africa works with, or Statistics South Africa at least, works with two types of unemployment figures. Now, we've got the strict definition of unemployment, which we've estimated about 31.4%. Now, bear in mind, these are based on surveys, so there's also a margin for error built into this. And typically, if any fluctuation or change is less than 2.5%, we might be looking at purely a margin of error built into the survey that's leading to this improvement. That's the first thing. The second one is the other definition of unemployment we work with is the expanded definition of unemployment. And this includes people that have become so discouraged that they have not been able to find formal employment, that they actually stop looking altogether, that they have not actually applied for a job in the 3 months preceding the survey. And that's sitting well over 40% and probably closer, moving steadily on to 50%. And that's, I think, a more accurate reflection of the state of the economy.
So what does that then tell us about the health of South Africa's labour market, the discouraged job seekers?
It's an alarming picture because it's been sustainably high for many years now, in the sense that there's been no meaningful improvement on it. And in fact, that the situation has worsened. The other thing that we can tell from this is that the new employment opportunities that have been created are not keeping pace with population growth at all. And this is leading to a situation of almost crisis levels pertaining to youth unemployment and people between the ages of 15 and 24 that are not in education, they're not in employment, they're not in training. And that has potential long-term, very negative structural consequences for the country. It also means that the unemployment problem we have is structural. It's not a seasonal fluctuation. It's not something that's temporary. It's baked into the economy. And a very large part of that is government policy, over-regulation, over-taxation, all these sorts of things.
So let's look at certain regions or provinces struggling more than others, and provincial data is showing that. So how should policymakers respond to these entrenched structural unemployment in places like the provinces of KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape?
So the major problems that we're sitting with in KZN, for example, and I think some of the big drivers there is we've lost the refinery capacity there used to be quite a big refinery in KZN. We're looking at potential job losses at the Hewlett's sugar firm or sugar factory. We're already sitting with smelters in Newcastle and elsewhere, and other industrial concerns that are possibly shuttering up because of economic issues. And it's the same with the Eastern Cape. The manufacturing sector there is in big trouble, especially around about Gqeberha and Humansdorp. And if we have to look about, well, what can the government do? There's a few things that they can immediately do is deregulating small and medium enterprises. They can reform the overly restrictive labor legislation because the inconvenient truth is the easier it becomes for firms to fire people, the easier and less risky it becomes for them to hire people. So there will be a a drive, or rather an increased acceptance of employing people because you're not taking as much of a risk in an already high risk sort of labor environment. Reducing tax burdens on job creators would be a massive one that also the state can do, and privatizing failing state enterprises and ensuring policy certainty. Policy uncertainty is probably one of the big things that is keeping foreign direct investment, which would be a big employment driver, out of SA. And we combine that with fixing the failing infrastructure. We need working road, we need working rail, we need working ports, and we need a working, or rather acceptable, safety and security situation in South Africa to encourage the creation of employment through economic activity. And that's the bottom line. No one goes out deliberately to create employment. Employment is created as a product of economic productivity. And we need the economy to work, and it needs to work for everybody. And that's the first step.
Some argue that temporary public employment programs can provide some relief. Why does Free SA believe that the long-term solutions lie from the private sector instead?
Typically because the state is very ill placed in order to provide long-term employment solutions, and that sort of goes right into this, where the word temporary does a lot of the work. We want people to be meaningfully employed, where they can actually grow and acquire the necessary skills and knowledge in order to be competitive internationally, so that the country's economy can be competitive internationally. One of our major issues is we unearth a lot of raw material in South Africa. Much of that is exported as it is raw to places like China and elsewhere. The value adding doesn't happen here. We don't have the factories and the manufacturing facilities we used to have to take those raw materials and turn them into something more valuable. And a big part of that is the state is ill placed to perform manufacturing tasks. And the state, in fact, should be less involved in the economy and get out of the way of the private sector, who will be definitely the most preferable and best employment creator between the two.
Gideon, we'll leave it there for today. Thanks again for your valuable insights. As you say, a very important topic, so we appreciate your time again.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Gideon Joubert is a spokesperson for Free SA, responding to the latest quarterly labour force survey figures from Statistics SA.